You there?
Yeah.
Well. Talk about a nice little frame. InsideOutrz mini podcast episode 1.1. How'd you like them apples, Lock Dog?
1.1, and it is very much a spin-off our life, or your life for five.
It is.
Diary of an Addict.
Yep. It is. It's definitely a Diary of an Addict spin-off. Suggested to us by a very lovely Leah Harris from Spotify to help us understand how we can best serve our audience in many different ways. Because when you think about it, right, you do podcasts and they're 30 to 40, maybe 50 minutes long, average.
Yeah.
Sometimes people literally don't have the time. And actually, when I looked at our analytics from our first podcast on YouTube, it showed that average people switched off after about 13 minutes. So we thought we'd do these mini episodes, these sub-episodes, off the back of the Diary of an Addict Life for Fives. So, trauma. Talk to me about trauma, Lock Dog.
It's such a big word. It's stated a lot these days, and I feel like a lot of people probably use the word trauma a little bit too much. It's definitely the root cause for a lot of problematic behaviors, especially in addiction. That's where we see it a lot. Generally, it's something to do with trauma. A lot of people say it has to be childhood trauma.
Yep.
I also know that's not the case for everyone.
No.
Also know that, if someone, today said that your ass isn't big enough, then apparently that's traumatic. I think there's a way that trauma is very misused at the moment.
I think it's becoming a trend.
It seems to be the go-to word for everything.
Yep.
Someone said something about me. I was traumatized. That traumatized me. It's traumatic. Or I'm triggered now. I'm re-traumatized. And if you overcook your muffin, it's not traumatic. I'll definitely say start again.
Exactly. And I think that's a problem. Is becoming a trend where we've recognized mental health, and that's amazing now that we've recognized it more and we talk about it more. But now, at times, I feel like it's almost trending and people are actually trying to use it to hide behind responsibilities too. And like you just said, like the use of the language, it reminds me of love, right? I know this is random, but you know me, I'm random.
Yeah.
But sometimes we just throw it out there, love. Oh, I love you. Yeah, see you later, love you. It's it's got a lot of power behind that word. And then we get so desensitized in our relationships with our partners or our family members, or you just throw it out there like it's just like a boomerang and it's just going to keep coming back.
Yeah,
but funnily enough, it doesn't keep coming back, does it? Because this is why marriages break down and everything, because we are overplaying love. And I believe we are now starting to also overplay the word trauma.
Yeah, it's something that's said a lot in the community. I've heard it said in jokes. I've heard it been used out of context. Most people that use it actually don't even know what the word trauma means or where it comes from. And it rubs me the wrong way because we work with very vulnerable people who very much have trauma as the root cause for their suffering. And for those of you that don't know, trauma comes from the Greek word wound. So a lot of people we work with have wounds, which are trauma. They lead on to them having an inability to deal with situations correctly. They pick up the wrong coping strategies also, which leads to harm to themselves. They have an inability to self-regulate emotions, which can further lead to more trauma.
Yep.
And it's a lot for these people. And I hear people joke about, it's traumatic and this and that. It's
just being thrown around as far as I'm concerned at times.
It's very much being thrown around. And yeah, I'd love to see that stop a little bit or people just kind of,
Talk to me about trauma porn. Like something that we were introduced to by a lovely lady that's actually consulting for us and helping us grow our business. And she came up with it. We won't say where we decided to coin this phrase, But talk to me about what trauma porn is.
Yeah, so it had come from an event. Well, actually, I've seen in a lot of events I attend. I attend a lot of events, seminars around health, addiction, recovery, new and emerging practices, just events like that, because, I like to keep myself sharp and I like to be up to date with what's going on in the community. There's very much a bit of a trend on lived experience, but I also see people getting up on stages or sharing a lot of their experiences as a way to get a standing ovation. And I see these people reliving their trauma that actually they haven't healed and dealt with appropriately, or whatever it is. And fallen apart on stage, and people are applauding and cheering them on, and I'm just watching someone in front of me completely fall to bits.
Yeah, and we're applauding
as they relive the cause for a lot of disaster that's transpired from that event.
Yep.
And they're getting the wrong type of validation. They're not getting the correct support. We're clapping them for falling apart and reliving their trauma, and it is like the phrase we had heard, trauma porn.
Yep.
Which I don't know if it makes sense, but it makes sense to me. We seem to go to our story as a way to feel like, again, we fit in, we belong, we're accepted. Instead of actually doing some healing and some inner work. It's like, I've got a lot of wounds and trauma I haven't dealt with. I'm going to share it with everyone. You can clap for me whilst I fall apart and relive it all over again in front of you.
Yeah, and the problem with that is, as much as it's great and very brave of people to share their story, if they are crumbling every time they do it, as you said, it's reliving trauma and it's re-traumatizing them. But secondly, it's also giving them a chemical hit in their brain that elevates them. So it's like, how confusing is that? I'm going to explain my story to be brave, but it's breaking me apart when I do it. But then I'm feeling good from it because I'm getting applause. And I don't think that's always a good thing. I'm not saying that some of these amazing public speakers that share their story, but one key element, right? Let me just say this. One key element about public speakers that share their story around background stuff is the ones that I know that are very good at what they do. They don't end up falling apart. They just tell you the story because this was the sad bit and it's made me here. That's a difference to me is...
Yeah, it's a story of overcoming adversity, dealing with whatever it was that was at the center of all those things. But then you share it to try and get people inspired to also go on to move and heal or achieve that dream and that goal. But yeah, and I will have to note this for everyone listening, that we're talking from a place of when we hear people talk about their addiction and the trauma that led them there.
Yep.
And instead of connecting through alcohol and other drugs and all these other things, they begin connecting to people through reliving trauma by telling their traumatic story. And then getting the wrong type of validation and feeling like, oh, now I belong because I haven't dealt with my stuff, but I'm sharing it. Yep,
exactly. And yeah, look, everybody's gone through some stuff, but I feel like it's really important to understand that much like love, thrown around willy-nilly just because it sounds good to say it, when sometimes it should have a lot more power behind it. I feel trauma is also being banded around and thrown around the place. As you said, by even simple things like, I'm traumatized. I burnt the muffins. That is not trauma. That's an unfortunate mistake that I'm pretty sure that the muffin's not going to need rehab for.
Yeah, and I said to you actually before this, there's something incredible I heard about trauma and stress. So it's all trauma is stressful, but not all stress is traumatic. So don't confuse difficult times with a traumatic event.
Like it, Doug. I like it.
A bit more sense.
There we go.